The unseen hero. The sky was dark, filled with the shadows of massive alien ships that hovered over Earth, their cold, metallic forms blocking out the sun. The world below was in chaos. People ran through the streets, trying to escape the inevitable. They had no chance against the alien invaders. The alien queen's fleet was far too powerful. Her ships were invincible, her army unstoppable. Victory seemed certain. The world was doomed. Or so they thought. No one expected what was about to happen. No one saw the hero who would change everything. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't anyone special, just an ordinary man, lost in the chaos like everyone else. His name was Ethan, and to the aliens, he was invisible, but fate had a different plan. Ethan was just a man caught in the middle of a war he didn't ask for. He had no training, no weapons, and no military experience, just an ordinary man. But when the aliens landed, and everything changed, Ethan found himself in the heart of the battle. The air was thick with the sound of explosions. The ground shook as the alien forces marched. Their monstrous ships hovered over the city, firing lasers at anything that moved. It felt like the end, humanity's final days. But Ethan wasn't scared. He wasn't a hero, at least not yet. He was just someone who saw an opportunity to do something, even if it meant risking everything. He couldn't just stand by and watch his world burn. He knew there had to be a way to fight back. He didn't have the training, he didn't have the strength, but he had something the aliens didn't expect. He had a deep sense of determination, a will to survive, and he wasn't going down without a fight. The alien queen's fleet was closing in, preparing for the final blow. Ethan could hear the orders being shouted by the alien commanders. They were about to destroy the last remaining defense forces, but Ethan wasn't ready to give up, not yet. He had a plan, a crazy plan, but a plan nonetheless. His heart raced as he sneaked through the streets, avoiding the aliens, keeping low to the ground. His mind raced with thoughts of what he could do, how he could make a difference. If only he could get close enough, get inside their command center. Maybe he could disrupt their communication. Maybe he could delay the attack. Anything to give humanity one more chance. As Ethan approached the edge of the city, he saw the alien ships in the distance, their massive forms blocking the sky. The sound of their engines filled the air. The ground beneath his feet vibrated with every step they took. He didn't have much time. The final assault was coming. The alien forces were about to strike. He had to move fast. Ethan found a small alleyway between two buildings and slipped inside, his heart pounding in his chest. He felt like he was walking into the lion's den, but he had no choice. There was no turning back. He moved quickly, staying in the shadows. As he crept closer to the alien command center, he could see it now, a large structure surrounded by armed guards. The command center, the heart of the alien fleet. If he could get inside, he could take them down. But how? There were too many aliens, too many weapons. It seemed impossible, but he couldn't give up now, not when so many people were counting on him. The fate of the world was in his hands, and that thought alone gave him the strength to keep going. He waited for the perfect moment, watching the guards as they moved in and out of the building, waiting for an opening. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the moment came. A guard walked away from his post, leaving the entrance unguarded. Ethan took a deep breath and made his move. He sprinted across the open ground, heart racing, his feet barely touching the earth as he ran. He reached the door, and in a flash, he was inside. The command center was quiet, too quiet. The air smelled sterile, like metal and electricity. He moved through the corridors, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Every corner he turned brought him closer to the heart of the alien fleet. His pulse quickened with each step. He knew this was his only shot. He couldn't afford to mess up now. As he reached the control room, he saw it, the alien commander sitting at the center, surrounded by a wall of glowing screens. He was busy issuing orders, his back turned. Ethan didn't hesitate. He moved quickly, silently, and took the alien commander by surprise. In a moment of chaos, Ethan activated the emergency shutdown sequence. The alien fleet began to power down. One by one, the ships began to stop. Their engines sputtered, their weapons powered down. A victory, not the final one, but a victory nonetheless. The alien queen's fleet was no longer invincible, and for the first time in a long time, humanity had a fighting chance, all because of one human, one unseen hero, who had the courage to rise against the impossible. Ethan wasn't a soldier, but today, he had become something much greater, a symbol of hope, reminder that even the smallest among us can change the course of destiny. The alien queen's reign of terror was no longer certain, and it all began with one man who refused to give up, who refused to be invisible, and who chose to fight back. The Last Stand. The alien queen's fleet had momentarily faltered, her ships no longer as mighty and terrifying as they had once been, but the war was far from over. Ethan's victory, though massive, had not shattered the enemy's resolve. The alien queen's forces were regrouping, ready to strike back with more power and fury than ever before, but now, humanity had a chance they hadn't had before, and Ethan wasn't about to waste it. He knew the battle had only just begun, but he also knew that this was their best chance. They had one shot to turn the tide, one shot to change the fate of the galaxy, and the humans weren't going to let it slip away. Ethan stood in the heart of the city, watching as soldiers and civilians alike scrambled to prepare. Weapons were being loaded, ships were being repaired, and the world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the next move. The air was thick with tension, and every heartbeat seemed to echo in the silence of the moment, but Ethan wasn't focused on the crowd, he wasn't focused on the war machines around him, he was focused on one thing, the alien queen. If they were going to win, they had to defeat her, and Ethan knew just how to do it. He'd seen the command center's layout, he knew the queen's personal ship was heavily protected, but he also knew it wasn't invincible. Ethan had fought for this moment, and he wasn't about to give up now. Not when the fate of humanity rested on his shoulders. He moved through the war-torn city, heading toward the underground tunnel system that would lead him to the heart of the alien queen's stronghold. The tunnel was dark, cold, and filled with the sounds of distant explosions above, but Ethan didn't let fear slow him down. He had a mission, and nothing was going to stop him. As he moved deeper into the tunnel, he could feel the weight of what he was about to do. He was about to take on the Queen's most elite guards, the best the alien empire had to offer, and there was no turning back. But Ethan wasn't afraid, not anymore. This was his moment, the only chance humanity had. The tunnel opened up into a massive underground hangar. Rows of alien war machines sat silently in the shadows. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he crept along the walls, avoiding the guards as they patrolled the area. His eyes were focused on one thing, the Queen's ship. It sat at the far end of the hangar, protected by a wall of alien soldiers, each one armed and ready for battle. But Ethan had a plan. He wasn't going to face them head-on, that would be suicide. No, he had to outsmart them, and that's exactly what he did. He waited for the perfect moment. When the guards weren't looking, he crept closer to the ship, his every step silent, his mind racing with possibilities. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Ethan reached the ship. He had no time to waste. The Queen would be expecting a direct attack, but what she wouldn't expect was the human who was about to sabotage her weapon. With a steady hand, Ethan pulled out the small device he'd been carrying, a makeshift EMP bomb, a gift from the Resistance. He had no idea if it would work, but he had no choice but to try. He placed the bomb on the outer hull of the Queen's ship, and in a flash, he was gone, running back toward the tunnel. As he rounded the corner, he heard the faintest hum, and then the explosion. The EMP blast sent a shockwave through the hangar, and for a moment, everything went silent. Ethan didn't stop running. He couldn't. The fate of humanity depended on him. The alien ships were no longer operating at full power. The Queen's command ship was offline, and the tide of the war had shifted. Ethan had done it, but it wasn't over yet. The alien Queen would stop at nothing to reclaim control, and he would have to face her directly. There was no other choice now. The Queen would fight to the last, but so would Ethan. The battle was no longer about survival, it was about proving to the aliens that humanity wasn't just a small, weak species. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the Queen would soon realize that. She had made a mistake, and Ethan would be the one to make her pay for it. The war was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, humanity had hope, and that hope came from one human, one hero, who had dared to rise up, and it was that hope that would carry them through the darkest of times. It was that hope that would lead them to victory. Ethan wasn't a soldier, but today, he was the leader humanity needed, and he was ready for whatever came next. The desperation. The war had escalated quickly, and humanity's fleeting hope was now threatened with every passing hour. Ethan's actions had stunned the alien forces, but the alien Queen wasn't one to be easily defeated. She was ruthless, and she had resources beyond imagination. Her command ship might have been temporarily disabled, but that was nothing compared to the might of her entire fleet. her soldiers, her war machines. They were relentless, and now they were on the move, ready for retaliation. Ethan had done his part, but he knew the hardest challenge was yet to come. He had to rally the remaining human forces, bring together every last soldier, every last fighter, to stand against the alien empire. The fate of Earth now rested on his shoulders, and he knew this wasn't just about saving his planet, it was about saving everything humanity had built, every home, every family, every life. They couldn't let the alien queen succeed, not now, not ever. Ethan looked around at the group of fighters gathered in the underground base, their faces grim, their bodies tired from weeks of constant battle, but there was something else in their eyes, something he hadn't seen before, hope. They were starting to believe, they were starting to think they could win, but it wasn't enough. They had to be more than just hopeful, they had to be strong, united. Ethan turned to face his comrades, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. This is it, we take the fight to them, we end this now. His words rang through the room, each soldier nodding in agreement, ready for whatever came next. We fight together, or we fall apart, but we will not give up, not today. Ethan's words were more than just a rallying cry, they were a promise to himself, to humanity, that they would do whatever it took to defeat the alien queen. But as they made their final preparations, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was about to begin. The aliens weren't going to let them take back the Earth without a fight, and the queen wasn't going to let some human hero take away her victory so easily. The ground shook beneath their feet as the first of the alien warships appeared on the horizon, dark and menacing. They loomed over the battlefield, casting a shadow over the city. But Ethan didn't flinch, he was ready, his team was ready. Together, they would strike, they would push the aliens back. No matter what it took. The first wave of soldiers moved out, taking their positions in the war-torn streets, their weapons at the ready, their resolve unshakable. But Ethan knew that their first wave would not be enough. The alien queen had more ships, more weapons, more soldiers, but they had something else, something the aliens didn't understand, the will to fight, the human spirit, and that was something the queen could never defeat. As the battle raged on, Ethan found himself at the front lines once again, leading his team through the chaos, dodging blasts from alien weapons, taking down enemy ships, and pushing forward, one step at a time. But just as they started to gain ground, the alien queen made her move. A massive explosion rocked the battlefield, and a new wave of alien ships emerged from the darkness, their numbers overwhelming. It felt like the end. The alien queen was pulling out all the stops, desperate to crush humanity once and for all. Ethan's heart raced as he saw the enemy forces closing in, but even in the face of certain defeat, he didn't lose hope. He couldn't. If he did, then everything they'd fought for would be in vain. We're not done yet, he shouted to his team, we fight until the end, no matter what. The soldiers around him rallied, their spirits lifted by his words, but even Ethan knew the odds were stacked against them. It was now or never. This was the moment that would determine the fate of Earth. As the alien ships descended, Ethan and his team launched a final, desperate assault. They fought with everything they had left, with every ounce of strength, every drop of energy. This was their last stand, and they weren't going down without a fight. Ethan had no idea how long they could hold out, but he knew one thing for sure, they wouldn't stop fighting, not as long as there was breath in their bodies, and that, above all else, was the one thing the alien queen could never take away, their will to survive, their desire to protect their world. It was unbreakable, and in that, the aliens would never win. The turning point. The battle raged on, the air filled with smoke and the sounds of war, each explosion reverberating through the streets, each blast shaking the very foundations of the city. Ethan and his team had pushed back the first wave, but the enemy was relentless, their numbers growing with each passing moment. The alien queen's forces were not simply invading, they were annihilating everything in their path. It seemed like victory was slipping further and further away, and yet, amidst all the chaos, a flicker of hope remained. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep Ethan going. It was the spark that kept his heart beating, the knowledge that they were not fighting alone, that the resistance was growing, and that humanity's will to fight was stronger than anything the aliens could throw at them. In the midst of the battlefield, Ethan received a transmission. The voice was crackling with static, but the message was clear. Ethan, we have a way in, we can reach the Queen's ship, but we need you to lead the charge." The words hit him like a wave of adrenaline. It was their chance, the one they'd been waiting for, the chance to strike at the heart of the alien queen's power, to take down the force that had brought humanity to the brink of extinction. This was the turning point, the moment that could change everything. Ethan's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The Queen's ship was heavily guarded, its defenses nearly impenetrable, but the human resistance had discovered a weakness, a gap in the alien's armor, a blind spot that Ethan and his team could exploit. The plan was risky, but it was the only option they had left. There was no turning back now. The decision had been made, and Ethan knew it was time to act. As he gathered his team, he could see the doubt in their eyes, the fear, the weariness from days of constant fighting, but he also saw something else, something stronger than fear, determination. They had come this far, and they weren't about to give up now. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice steady, his words cutting through the tension like a knife. "We go in, we hit them hard, and we take down the Queen. If we don't, it's over. We fight until the very end, no matter what it takes." His words fueled their resolve, and they began to move, heading toward the heart of the alien queen's stronghold, through narrow alleyways and hidden passages, avoiding patrols as they made their way to the entrance of the queen's ship. The air grew colder as they got closer, the presence of the alien fleet heavy in the atmosphere. It felt like the calm before a storm. But Ethan refused to let the fear take hold. They had come too far to turn back now. As they reached the final stretch, the ground beneath them trembled. The alien queen's flagship loomed before them, its massive hull almost glowing with a menacing light, guarded by an army of elite soldiers. This was it, the heart of the enemy's power, and they had to break through it. They had to take it down. Ethan led the charge, his team right behind him. They rushed toward the entrance, their weapons raised, firing at the alien guards in a desperate attempt to break through the defenses. But the alien soldiers were relentless, their strength and numbers overwhelming. For every soldier Ethan and his team took down, two more seemed to take their place. It was a brutal fight, each step forward feeling like a battle in itself. But Ethan refused to give up. He couldn't. Humanity's survival depended on this moment. With every pulse of his weapon, every strike of his fist, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. But it only made him fight harder. And then, just when it seemed like the tide would turn against them, something unexpected happened. A massive explosion erupted from inside the Queen's ship. The sound of it reverberated through the air, shaking the ground beneath them, and the enemy forces faltered. It wasn't just any explosion, it was a signal, a message from the resistance. Humanity had made their move, and the Queen's ship was now vulnerable. The aliens had underestimated the humans, they had thought them weak, but Ethan's bravery had sparked something bigger. It had inspired others to fight, to take action, and now, it was time to finish this. With renewed strength, Ethan and his team pushed forward, their resolve solidified by the knowledge that they were no longer fighting alone. Humanity had united in a way the aliens could never have imagined, and now, the turning point had come. The alien queen, once untouchable, now faced the full force of humanity's will to survive, and Ethan was ready to lead the final charge, ready to strike the blow that would change the fate of Earth forever. This wasn't just about winning the war, it was about proving that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, that they could stand up to any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. Ethan wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the future, for a world that had yet to be written, a world where humanity's resilience would be the story for generations to come. The sacrifice. The final moments of the battle were closing in, but even in the face of humanity's brightest hope, the odds were still staggering. The alien queen's ship, though vulnerable, was still teeming with guards, weapons, and more advanced defenses than Ethan had ever seen. He had led his team to the heart of the enemy's fortress, but now, a new challenge awaited them. The Queen's final line of defense was unlike anything they had faced. It was an impenetrable wall of alien soldiers and advanced technology. Everything seemed to hinge on one move, one last chance to break through, but there was no denying the brutal truth. If they didn't act quickly, humanity's chances would slip away forever. As they stormed through the Queen's ship, fighting their way through wave after wave of alien forces, Ethan's thoughts turned to something darker, something he hadn't allowed himself to fully consider until now. A sacrifice would be necessary. One of them had to stay behind, and he knew it would likely be him. It wasn't a decision he was ready to make, but there was no other option. Someone had to hold the line. Someone had to ensure that the rest of the team could make it to the Queen and deliver the final blow, and with a heavy heart, Ethan realized that he was the one who had to do it. His team was stronger with him leading them, but without him, they still had a chance to defeat the alien Queen. The air inside the Queen's ship grew heavier, the sound of alien weapons blasting and the clashes of metal echoing down the corridors. The smell of smoke and destruction filled Ethan's senses, but there was no time to dwell on the emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. His focus remained sharp. The mission was all that mattered now. His team was pushing forward, but they were slowing down. The alien defenses were relentless, and there was no way they could keep going at this pace without being overwhelmed. That's when Ethan made his choice. He turned to his team, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I'm going to hold them off," he said firmly, locking eyes with each member of his team. "You've got to make it to the Queen. You have to end this. I'll keep them busy long enough for you to get through." They hesitated, their faces filled with concern, but Ethan could see the understanding in their eyes. They knew what had to be done. "Go!" Ethan shouted, his voice louder this time. "It's the only way, now go!" Reluctantly, they turned and ran toward the central chamber where the Queen waited, leaving Ethan behind, standing alone in the path of the alien onslaught. The alien soldiers were closing in, their weapons aimed directly at him, but Ethan didn't flinch. His heart raced, but his hands were steady. The mission had to succeed, even if it meant giving his life to see it through. The alien forces were getting closer, and Ethan's mind raced with the realization that there was no time left. The only way to ensure his team's success was to make the ultimate sacrifice. The ship was set to detonate in moments, a last-ditch effort by the aliens to prevent the humans from reaching the Queen, but Ethan had already placed the explosives, hidden within the walls of the ship's core. They would be the last act of defiance against the alien forces, but they required one final trigger, a trigger Ethan would never leave behind. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back. With a final glance at the team that had fought alongside him, Ethan turned toward the approaching enemy, his eyes locked on the mass of alien soldiers, determined to buy his team enough time. He could hear the rush of his breath in his ears, his pulse thundering, but he didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, drawing his weapon, and in the blink of an eye, he was charging toward the enemy lines. The alien soldiers fired at him, but he ducked and weaved through the barrage, each movement calculated, precise. As he worked his way toward the core of the ship, it was now or never. He had to buy them as much time as possible, and every second counted. The ship shook violently as the first wave of explosions hit. Ethan fought through the pain, through the chaos, knowing that each step he took was closer to the end, but also knowing that he had done his part. Humanity's chance at survival was in his hands, and he wasn't about to let the Queen's forces destroy everything. He fought with everything left inside him, every breath a battle, every move a step closer to his final mission. And as the final countdown echoed through the corridors, he knew what would happen next. The sacrifice was inevitable, but he had no regrets. He had given humanity its chance, and that was all he needed. As the detonator clicked in his hand, and the final explosion rocked the Queen's ship, Ethan's last thoughts were not of fear or doubt, but of hope. Hope for a future that would continue. Hope for a world that would live on because of the bravery and sacrifice of those who had fought to protect it. His team would succeed, they would defeat the Queen, and humanity would live on. The final battle. The world stood still for a moment, as the explosion echoed through the alien Queen's flagship, sending shockwaves through every corner of the ship. The detonation had been far more powerful than anyone had expected. The entire command center was in flames, and chaos swept across the enemy lines. But despite the overwhelming destruction, the Queen's forces were not finished yet. She had survived, she had endured, and she was furious. Her ship was badly damaged, but it was far from destroyed. And the Queen wasn't about to let humanity's final act of defiance be the end of her empire. She would fight back, she would crush them all, one by one, if she had to. Ethan's sacrifice had given his team the opening they needed. But the battle was far from over. They had pushed through the alien defenses, fighting their way to the Queen's inner sanctum, but with every step forward, they were met with greater resistance. The Queen's elite guards had rallied, and they were ready to do whatever it took to stop them. Ethan had bought them time, but now it was up to them to finish what he had started. There was no turning back, they were too close now. The sound of weapons firing and the clash of metal filled the corridors as Ethan's team fought their way through the heart of the Queen's flagship, their weapons flashing as they took down every alien that stood in their path. But even with their determination, even with their unity, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time. The Queen's wrath had been unleashed, and it was only a matter of time before she threw everything she had left at them. Her desperation was palpable, and with each passing second, the team knew they were getting closer to the final confrontation, the moment that would decide the fate of humanity. Finally, they reached the Queen's throne room. The air inside was thick with tension, the very walls of the room seemed to hum with energy, and the Queen herself stood waiting, her form towering and regal, her eyes burning with fury. She had been watching them from the shadows, and now, with the destruction of her ship and the loss of so many of her forces, she was ready to face her enemies. "You think you can defeat me?" The Queen's voice echoed through the room, cold and menacing. "You are nothing but insects, nothing but a fleeting moment in time. I am eternal, I will destroy you all." Her words were filled with venom, but Ethan's team didn't falter. They had come too far to turn back now. They had seen the worst the alien Queen could throw at them, and they were still standing, still fighting, ready to make the final push to end this war once and for all. They raised their weapons, eyes locked on the Queen, and in that moment, they knew what had to be done. The Queen moved with lightning speed, her eyes glowing with power as she unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, but the humans were ready. They dodged, they returned fire, and in a flash, the battle was on, the clash of energy against energy, human against alien, the fate of Earth hanging in the balance. The Queen was powerful, more powerful than anything they had faced before, but she had underestimated the strength of humanity's resolve. She had underestimated their unity, their will to survive. The battle seemed to stretch on forever, each movement a fight for their lives, but even as the Queen fought back with everything she had, the human team pressed forward, their attacks relentless, their determination unwavering. The alien Queen had never encountered anything like this before. Humanity's strength came from more than just their weapons, it came from something deeper, something that couldn't be crushed or destroyed. In the midst of the battle, as the Queen's power began to wane, Ethan's team saw their opening. The Queen's guard was down, and they had one final chance to strike. With a synchronized effort, they moved in, together, and with a final, powerful blow, they struck the Queen down, her massive form collapsing to the ground. Her reign of terror shattered in an instant. The battle was over, the war was won. But the cost had been high. The team stood in the silence that followed, their bodies battered and exhausted, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had just accomplished. They had won, yes, but they had lost so much along the way. Ethan was gone, his sacrifice was the key to their victory, but it was a price they would never forget. They had done the impossible, they had defeated the alien Queen, but the victory came at a cost that would echo through the generations to come. The alien Queen's ship, once a symbol of terror, now lay in ruins, and with her fall, the alien empire crumbled, their forces scattered, their power broken. Humanity had reclaimed their world, they had saved Earth from destruction, and though the battle had been long and hard, they had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity could rise up, could fight back, and could win. But it was Ethan's memory that would live on, it was his bravery that would inspire future generations. And it was his sacrifice that would remind them all that even the smallest among them could change the course of history. The unexpected victory. The silence in the aftermath of the battle was deafening. The Queen's ship lay in ruins, the once mighty fortress of terror now reduced to a smoking, lifeless hulk drifting in space. Ethan's team stood amidst the wreckage, their bodies bruised, their minds exhausted, yet their hearts were heavy with a bittersweet sense of triumph. The Queen was gone, but the price of victory had been steep. The team had lost comrades, and they had lost Ethan, the man who had given everything to ensure that humanity would survive, to ensure that they would have a future. As they stood on the desolate, empty battlefield, the wind blew softly, carrying with it the faint scent of burning debris. The wreckage of the Queen's ship scattered around them like the final remnants of an unstoppable force. But now, with her fall, Earth was free, humanity had won, yet the victory felt hollow. There were no celebrations, no cheering crowds, just a quiet, solemn moment of reflection. Because even as the alien empire fell, the scars of the war would remain forever. Ethan's sacrifice had not been in vain, they all knew that, but it was still hard to shake the weight of the loss. The thought that one man's courage had been the key to their survival, yet he was not here to see the fruits of that victory, to see the world that they had saved. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but it was one they had to face. The team stood in silence for a moment, each one processing the enormity of what they had just accomplished, what they had just lost, and what they had gained. They had defeated an alien empire, but the real victory wasn't in the destruction of the Queen's fleet, it was in the strength of humanity's spirit, their ability to rise up in the face of impossible odds, to fight for their world, for their future, and for each other. As they made their way back to Earth, the weight of their journey seemed to press down on them even more. The memories of the battle, of the friends they had lost, would never fade, but there was hope now, a new kind of hope, one that hadn't existed before the war. Humanity had shown that they could overcome even the most insurmountable challenges, that they could fight back against oppression, against fear, and against the greatest forces in the galaxy. When they returned to Earth, the war-torn cities slowly began to heal. The streets that had once been filled with chaos and fear now started to see life return, people rebuilding, families reunited, and the world, though scarred, was stronger for it. The survivors carried the memory of those they had lost, especially Ethan, the hero who had given everything for them, for their future, for Earth. The alien Queen's empire, once feared and unstoppable, was no more, and humanity was now standing at the precipice of a new era, one where they would no longer be the underdogs, no longer weak and helpless in the eyes of the galaxy. They had proved themselves, not just to the aliens, but to themselves. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would soon know their name, humanity's name, as one that stood for resilience, for courage, and for victory. But the true victory lay in what they had learned from the war, from Ethan's sacrifice, from their struggles, and from their triumphs. They had learned that even in the darkest times, when everything seemed lost, the light of hope could still shine through, and that hope, fueled by unity and courage, would lead them to a future where no enemy, no force in the universe, would ever break their will again. As they looked toward the future, there was no doubt in their minds that they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to face the galaxy, not as victims, not as the weak, but as humans, proud and unyielding, ready to protect their home, to defend their people, and to stand tall as the heroes they had become. The story of Earth's triumph over the alien queen would be passed down for generations to come, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and a reminder that no matter how small or insignificant a person might seem, they could change the course of history. Ethan's name would be etched in the stars, his legacy forever intertwined with the survival of humanity.